Welcome everybody to the Orlando Sentinel's editorial board interview with the Republican candidates in Florida House District 36. There is no incumbent in this race. The winner of this race will go on to face the winner of the Democratic primary. And that video has already been posted, so you can watch that as well. We are going to go straight into questions, and at the end, the candidates will have a chance to make a closing statement. And I would also like to note that with us tonight is Scott Maxwell, who is our columnist, we all know, and the candidates joining us tonight are Angel Perry and Richard Santos. So thank you, and we will just go ahead and dive right into the questions. And I'm going to start where everybody likes to start, with the money. Starting next year, the voluminous flow of federal money that has swelled the Florida budget up to $110 million is going to start drying up. What changes to budgetary policy is Florida going to need to make sure that they don't encounter shortfalls? And let's start with Ms. Perry.
Okay, thank you, Chris, for that question about the budget for next session. The state is doing very well. What we're not doing is being efficient on making sure revenues are actually earning. There are plenty of opportunities where the state can earn money in different venues for itself, in order to not only have the taxes come in from the payers, but to keep them low. There are different platforms that other states have taken that Florida has the opportunity to do to generate revenue besides just depending on the taxes and sales tax that comes in from the constituents.
Are there any particular, since you still have some time left, any particular revenues you have in mind there?
Well, some of the things I was looking at, which would be an opportunity for revenue growth, is I came up with the first responders merit system statewide to be implemented, and a bill to be drafted. With that platform, communities can be engaged with the highlighted members that, you know, like a police officer can volunteer, and that police officer is highlighted for the month, for the year, and those that become popular in their communities can have merchandise that people for, and that would go right back into the state funds, also bolster up salaries and incomes for precincts.
All right, Mr. Santos.
All right, so the Florida budget's $112.1 billion. We don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. As a fiscal conservative, I would propose examining every single line on that budget, department by department, line by line, every single year, and just wholesale eliminate departments if there's any duplication of services. You know, the current crop of legislators are treating our money like it's monopoly money. $112 billion is enough to run a state. $100 billion is enough to run a state. I propose a line by line, department by department audit every single year. We expect our citizens to live within their means. The state needs to do the exact same thing.
Thank you very much. All right, Ms. Plakon.
Well, I agree. I think we need to live within our means. We absolutely, right now we have a very responsible legislature, a very responsible governor. We have a record surplus. And so we have been living within our means. I think we need to continue to do that. And so definitely.
Well, actually, I thought I would jump over to a different issue that's a little bit concrete. As I'm sure you guys know, the legislature clamped down on abortion this past session, and with the overturning of Roe versus Wade, this governor and a number of legislators have vowed to clamp down even more. Can you tell us specifically where you stand on the issue, particularly when it should be allowed, if at all, and what exceptions you support, if any? And Ms. Plakon, we can start with you.
Well, I believe life begins at conception. I support a ban on abortion with the exception of the life of the mother. And so I am pro-life, traditional
Okay, so
pro-life.
thank you. So that's a total ban.
Yes, with the
Okay.
exception of the life of the mother.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Ms.
And
Perry?
can I just add one more thing?
You
I
bet.
think you really need to also focus on making adoptions more affordable. I have a friend in the Panhandle who spent $45,000 adopting a son. And I think there's something wrong with that when it costs that much. And I asked him today, I said, is that a special exception or is that something that was commonplace in our state? And he said, Rachel, that is on the low side, that most of these adoptions cost upwards of, $50,000, $60,000. And when only the richest people can adopt a child, something's wrong with our state. So I definitely think that we need to change that and make adoption more affordable in collaboration with a pro-life bill.
Thank you very much. Ms. Perry?
Thank you for the question, Scott. I am pro-life, and this is why growing up generationally, our homes were foster homes. I don't see a lot of that here in Florida, and that needs to change. The options to protect life needs to be from conception until, you're, elderly. And it needs to be all of life, including if, someone needs to give up a child because they're incapable of mothering or fathering at the time. So our systems to protect our children need to be more clearly defined and accessible to the families that want to open to them. So I am pro-life.
Okay. And just so I can follow up, specifically I was asking, is there any exceptions in any time? I gathered you were saying total ban, no exceptions, or?
The life of the mother is important. We can't say that we're pro-life and we're letting women die because they can't carry to term. So that's going to be vital.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Santos?
Yeah, I believe life begins at conception. I believe protection of life from cradle to the grave. Our Constitution specifically singles out life, liberty, and property. And that's why life is first. I believe the only exception is for the life of the mom, and it's got to be imminent, it's got to be grave. I do not believe in a rape or incest exception. I haven't heard anyone else speak to that because I'll tell you, they're so rare and they're so infrequent that we just don't, it just wouldn't make sense. However, I will say this, it would be brutal to tell a young woman who's been victimized, we're sorry you've been raped or there's been incest, you have to carry this child to term without providing that young lady the support she needs to bring that child to term and either keep it or give it up for adoption. There's real common sense solutions in that. But we don't really seem to address that. As conservatives, we say, oh, no, sorry, you just can't do it. We need to provide alternatives.
Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. And I would like to ask about something that happened last week when the governor removed the Hillsborough County State Attorney for talking about whether or not he would enforce these restrictions, including criminal penalties, should those be assigned in future statutes. And that brings up two questions. One is, do you believe the governor exceeded his statutory authority? And the second is, what criminal penalties, if any, should be associated with abortion? And let's start with Ms. Perry.
So me being a conservative, I am an advocate of freedoms. The states govern themselves. What the governor did was important. I think he made the right move in that, because if we have laws here, they need to be followed. And if the attorneys cannot follow the law, then they don't need their jobs. They can go to private practice to be at will. Criminalizing something that happens in other states because a resident is Floridian. I do not believe in that. That will never be something that I would fall for, because if another state's doing something else, that's what freedom's about. Having choices and your beliefs and being able to live them.
Okay, Mr. Santos.
Was the question, would we criminalize the abortions if they're illegal?
It's two
Okay.
parts. One
Yeah,
is to Commissioner exceeds authority with Mr. Warren, and then the second is what criminal penalties, if any, should be associated with abortions that are performed in violation of the law.
Okay. The governor was absolutely statutorily within his rights to do what he did by removing a sitting official who refused to enforce the law. In 24 years of patrolling the streets of Florida, I didn't get to make a choice on whether I enforced or didn't enforce a law. The citizens count on us to enforce laws. You know, I've done it. I didn't pick and choose. The law applies to everyone. As far as criminalizing abortion, when I was a patrol deputy on the streets, I worked a case where a guy kicked a pregnant woman in the stomach. Well, the woman lived and the child died. That man went to prison. Anyone who commits an abortion in violation of existing statute, there should be criminal penalties, plain and simple.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Plakon?
I'll answer the abortion question first. I think that the abortion industry has made a lot of women victims. They have lied to a lot of women, and it's been an atrocity what has happened. I think the criminal penalties should be focused on the doctor and not the woman, who sometimes and often are underage. Now, talking about what the governor did, I think that Governor Santos was completely within his right. And as far as I can see, he was following the state and U.S. Constitution. If he goes outside of that, you know, let me know. But as far as I can see, he was well within his rights. If anything, we should be afraid of this state prosecutor who started trying to make law. You know, if he wants to make laws, he should run for the legislature.
Thank you very much. I wanted to move on to an issue. One of the best ways for voters to get an idea about how aspiring candidates in the legislature would vote would be to know where they stood on past issues. And I wanted to pick one issue that the legislature dealt with this past year. It had to do with solar power and net metering. As you may know, the legislature passed a ban that would have essentially reduce the amount of credit residential solar customers could get for producing their own energy. The governor vetoed it. I'm wondering how you would have voted on this bill, and we'll start with you, Mr. Santos.
Yeah, I think the governor made a great decision. My current representative, Scott Plakon, actually voted for this. The power companies need to stand on their own 2 feet and make decisions like big boys and girls. They're in the business of making money. If they don't want to buy power back from folks, they can make that decision. They don't need the legislature. They don't need the legislature filing a bill that was written by Florida Power and Light to do that. And that's exactly the problem in Tallahassee. The special interests have taken over. And that's a classic example of our governor standing up against a weak, corrupt, ineffective legislature.
Thank you very much. Ms. Perry?
The governor was absolutely right. One, we need to focus on the task at hand. The state has no business trying to regulate, micromanage private industry. If I own property and I'm able to produce my own electricity and it's flowing back into the community, you know, what is the legislator doing trying to tell me I can't profit off of it? If I paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for that setup, because it's not cheap, why would I not be able to recoup that expenditure? So the governor was absolutely correct in vetoing it, and hopefully with being in the next legislature, we can just not have those bills even come across our desk.
Thank you very much. Ms. Plakon?
I agree with the governor. I think he was showing his support for solar and clean energy. And I think we should pursue and explore more ways to expand those opportunities, especially in ways that don't raise the rates for the ratepayers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. One of the big issues, and I'm sure you've all been talking a lot about this, is housing. Now, the Sadowski Fund is set up. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Sadowski Fund, which is dedicated to affordable housing in Florida. It is set up to increase the supply long term. Should the state be looking, in addition, at short-term assistance for people who are in distress right now? And then on the long-term aspect, do you believe that the way the Sadowski Fund is currently structured, divided between two programs known as SHIP and SAIL, do you believe that's the way to go in the future? And we'll start with Mr. Santos.
Yes, I actually have an economics degree and an MBA, and I run a real estate business. So I do know the Sadowski Fund. I can tell you one thing about the Sadowski Fund that was founded in 1992. $3 billion has been skimmed off the top of it by our legislators. This is the very first year it's been fully funded. That's disgusting, that's deplorable, and that's theft. That's 47,000 Floridians who could have had access to affordable housing. That's 47,000 Floridians over 30 years that wouldn't be sleeping in their cars and living in cheap motels. We boast of a budget surplus, but you know, our 65% majority Republican legislature and 60% majority House robbed that fund to do who knows what with. That money needs to be paid back like yesterday.
If you could say though, what do you think that, in addition to paying it back, do you think that there should be any short-term assistance for people who are in distress right now?
You know, there should be safety nets in place for those who really need it. Very, very short term, very focused, and very limited in nature. But I'll tell you that if we want to actually take affordable housing seriously, we need to actually utilize the Sadowski Fund for what it was used for, and not the personal piggy bank of Florida state legislators and senators.
Thank you. Ms. Plakon.
I believe in fully funding the Sadowski Fund, and I think we should fund it every single year. I do like the SHIP and SAIL programs, and I also think that we should have safety nets for short term. Absolutely. In addition to that, I think we need to cut regulation on the local level because right now we have a housing shortage and it's keeping prices high. We've seen a little bit of leveling off. But, you know, as a person who's been in the real estate business for 18 years, I can tell you we do need more housing here in the state of Florida. And one impediment to that is just too much regulation on development at the local level, including impact fees. So I'd like to see that change and those impact fees go down some.
Ms. Perry.
So with the surpluses that we have in the Sadowski Fund, I think it's more than time for Florida to start doing things a little different. Having a 1 or 2 limit rescue plan for those that are in crisis of losing their homes could come out of that fund. Additional to that, there needs to be less regulation on municipalities, but also an encouragement from the legislator for them, municipalities to be able to organize and zone housing for homes. Developers come in, but those municipalities should be able to say, hey, we actually need single family homes, or we need this type of home for the communities that they serve. So there just needs to be quite a bit of adjustment from doing the normal, the status quo, to actually adjusting to the population growth that expands over 1,000 people a day here in Florida.
I want to ask a question that's also related to housing, and it actually has to do with Seminole County's rural boundary. That is traditionally a local issue, but as you all may know, there was actually sort of an in run that was attempted, in part with help from legislators from Seminole County in the past, to get around that. I am wondering what you think about the rural boundary specifically. There's been a particular developer and company that wants to build there. What are your thoughts on the status of that boundary and whether it should be changed? We'll start with you, Ms. Plakon.
I wholeheartedly believe in protecting and preserving the rural boundary, period.
Okay, that's short and sweet. Ms. Perry.
So as speaking to the people that live in the rural boundary, it 100% needs to be protected. If that needs to be a long-term legislation that they cannot be developed unless the people vote otherwise, it needs to be protected, period.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Santos.
I believe the citizens have spoken. Seminole County is a home rule county. And if we as state legislators are going to complain about the federal government, stepping on the necks of the state and forcing us to do certain things, we need to quit doing the same thing to municipalities and counties. I will say this, I know exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about Chris Dorworth, you're talking about Rivercross. I'm not going to mention any candidates by name, but check campaign finance file and see who on this panel is taking money from him.
You brought up the issue of local preemption, with the legislature enforcing mandates on local governments that had traditionally been the province of local government. And I'm hearing you, Mr. Santos, say that you would oppose preemption in the matter of voter approved initiatives. How far do you take that? Do you include local government actions such as regulation of short-term rentals and other issues that have been preempted? How hands-off should the state government be and local government business?
Well, I'll answer this by asking a question. What is the purpose of having a county charter and having home rule if we're not going to let the counties run the way they want to run? Why is it that we will sit here and pass preemption laws and tell them, the counties and municipalities, oh, we think we can do something so much better than you. But when the Biden administration comes and has us try to do something, we complain against that. It's duplicitous, it's two-faced, and it's just wrong. We should do what the Constitution says and what the Charter says, period, end of story.
Thank you. Ms. Plakon.
Well, I think that there are times where the state does have to preempt. I mean, the local governments, it's great, especially in local development, for them to do their own thing. I definitely like home rule in that aspect, but sometimes they're unconstitutional. I mean, I'll give you an example, especially some of these South Florida communities and counties. One of them tried to override the Second Amendment one time. And so when it comes to issues like that, the state legislature has to step in and say, you're being unconstitutional.
Just to follow up, wouldn't the Constitution take care of that?
It should, but we've got to also have a safety net in the state legislature.
All right. Ms. Perry.
So other than a check and balance, I believe in home rule. The local municipalities know their communities and what the people need. Other than something that covers the entire state, legislators need to be hands off. There's no sense in duplicating bosses. We don't need everyone to be a boss. We don't need the mayor, the city, councilman, and everybody having the same job. There's a place for everyone to make things work smooth, and the legislator is there to make sure things are balanced, not to just overrule and micromanage.
Thank you very much. I want to follow up on this since we talked about preemption. Ms. Plakon mentioned the gun issues. It looks like with Supreme Court decisions, gun issues are going to continue or even more so be handled at the state level. I want to ask you about just two specifics. I think voters deal well in terms of specifics with with gun issues. Do you support universal background checks is number one, and number two, do you support any restrictions on high capacity weapons? And we'll start with you, Ms. Plakon.
I do not support any further restrictions. I'm wholeheartedly for the Second Amendment.
Okay, thank you very much. And Mr. Santos?
I believe the Second Amendment says what it says. It was written the way it was written on purpose. And I'm not going to qualify it by saying any further restrictions. I believe there should be no restrictions. We didn't have to get a permit to talk tonight. I don't need to get a permit to keep the police from kicking in my front door in violation of the Fourth Amendment. I don't need a permit or a restriction to invoke the Fifth Amendment to keep me from incriminating myself. I don't need a permit to invoke the Seventh Amendment right to a jury trial. Why is the Second Amendment so different? You know, we become weak and we become, you know, politically coy in trying to qualify these answers. The Second Amendment says what it says, it means what it means, and I support it 100%. I've carried firearms my entire life, and, you know, I'm not a member of the NRA, but when I was handed a rifle and got off a plane in a hot desert, no one asked me for that NRA card. 100% people have died for this Constitution. They've died for this right. I've carried my friends under flag-draped coffins. I believe in every single word without restriction, period, end of story.
Thank you for that.
May I respond to, because he did
No,
bring
actually,
that
I think we're not doing back and forth. But Mr. Santos, if I can ask one follow-up. First of all, thank you for your
Sure.
service. Just so I'm clarified, no restrictions, so fully automatic weapons, you'd be in favor of anybody who wants one having one of those?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Perry.
So I'm ready to draft a bill for constitutional carry here in Florida. We do not have that, and to repeal the current red flag law. It has hit over 8,000 law-abiding citizens and taken away their home protection, business protection. In addition to that, criminals don't need permission or checks and balances. They just don't follow the law to begin with. And how many homes have to be raided and how many women and children have to die before we're allowing law-abiding citizens to protect themselves? So I am against restrictions. Law-abiding citizens need to protect themselves, period.
Thank you very much.
I would like to talk briefly about the concept of school choice. Florida has two main venues for school choice, one being charter schools and the other being school vouchers. The legislature in the past session made some changes in the voucher program, consolidated many of those vouchers, and I would like to know, do you believe the current system is working out well? And do you believe that the state should expand the opportunity to use vouchers to all parents? And let's start with Ms. Plakon.
I would like a expansion of the voucher program to all parents. I think parents are the best ones to decide in the care and upbringing of their children. Nobody will love you like your mama. As a new mom, having given birth 6 days ago, I can tell you that nobody will love you like your mama, and nobody will fight for you like your mama. And so parents are wholeheartedly the best one to decide where their kids should go to school. Absolutely, in our state.
All right, Mr. Santos.
Yeah, I agree in fully funding and expanding the school voucher program. Our schools are an abject failure. We're falling behind in STEM. We used to be laboratories of innovation in our school system. We've turned into a consumer society that produces nothing. I have 2 children with PhDs, and I see in a technical PhD program, there's probably out of 20 kids in my daughter's program, you know, maybe 2 or 3 kids who are native to the States. I don't say that as a knock to people coming here that are taking advantage of these opportunities, but we're falling behind. We are falling way, way, way behind. If we don't want to have our networks and our cybersecurity run by China, we need to step up our game and expand STEM programs, expand the voucher program, and have the money follow the child. Plain and simple. The money should follow the child, and schools that are failing, let them shut down like any other business. If they're not meeting the needs of our students, close them down.
Ms. Perry.
So I myself went to private school, which afforded me to be able to practice my home belief systems, being from a Christian home. And again, on the platform of freedom, all of us as taxpayers, the voucher system would give each parent a choice for their child to be brought up in the belief systems and the education that they feel and deem necessary. Parents are the first teachers, so they should be choosing where the education and the funding lies with the education system. So yes, the voucher program needs to absolutely be expanded.
Okay. We've written a good deal about the voucher system, a series here. Basically, as you may know, there are very few rules and very little accountability in the state's voucher program. We found voucher schools that have high school dropouts serving as teachers, multiple schools that have shut down, flattened out, and stranding children in the middle of the school year because their finances were such a mess. Do you believe that there should be any more accountability for the taxpayer dollars spent on those voucher schools, or is everything pretty good as it is? We'll start with you, Mr. Santos.
100%. If you take a dime of taxpayer money and you utilize it fraudulently, you should face the maximum stiffest penalties under the law. Period. End of story.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Perry.
Yeah, so with the expanded voucher system, it would be imperative that there is a baseline standard. So having a high school dropout as a teacher, that is ridiculous. An educator be held at a standard. You don't, ask an engineer to make up their own education certificates. Why would you want the education system to be made up? So there has to be a standard across the board, whether it's public school, private school, or charter.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Plakon.
Parents are the ones that should look at the accountability of schools. I mean, this is to get involved in that, and schools can compete in a way that businesses do. And when they compete, they get better. They compete for the hearts and minds of parents and kids. So I think that it should be up to the parents.
One of the issues that has been a bone of contention with some local governments is their ability, and I'm stealing one of Scott's questions here, to make decisions about how tourist development money is spent. In many cases, you have counties levying property taxes for things that they believe could be paid for with tourist development tax money that's really not needed to be spent on tourism. What is your opinion of allowing more flexibility statewide in the use of tourist development tax money, bed tax as it's called, and should that be available to all counties or just the ones who ask for it? Let's start with Ms. Plakon.
Well, I think if the intention is tourist development, that's what it should be used for. If you're asking about Visit Florida, I support Visit Florida with, in a conservative way. I think it's useful when we have hurricanes, when we have environmental issues like red tide, or as you saw in 2020, when we had like a nationwide lockdown, and God forbid we ever have that again. I would never support that. But situations like that, people need to know that Florida is open for business. And so I think that's a good use of it.
Thank you, Ms. Perry.
So the tourism tax dollars doesn't need to be overly regulated. Again, we don't need to have double and triple bosses regulating the same thing. It's already titled for tourism, so the communities need to make sure it's customized for what's unique to them. Like St. Augustina's has its own culture, Miami has its own culture. There's not going to be a blanket factory sameness across Florida, but the dollars do need to develop those communities so that people have a variety of things to visit here in Florida and spend their money.
Mr. Santos.
Visit Florida is a boondoggle. It is a waste of taxpayer money. Every single tax dollar needs to be allocated to a very, very specific purpose. And if the municipality or the county or the state says they're going to collect a tax and they're going to put it towards a specific purpose, the moment they don't, that becomes theft, plain and simple. Visit Florida is a boondoggle because if a company wants people to come visit them, they're going to spend money on advertising and not rely on the state to do it. If they can't do it without the state, let them shut down. They're making plenty of money.
Okay, thank you. Well, we are getting really close to the end of our time here. And I wanted to say this has been a great wrap up for our primary interview season. Great answers, some sharp differences, and some surprising agreements. So I thank you very much for taking your time. And let's do some closing statements. Let's start with Ms. Perry. Just give us your 2-minute pitch for why you should be the nominee.
As the District 36 legislator, I am for the people, period. I'm already doing the work in the community between Seminole and Orange County, and all I'm asking is for the people to know that from my last 7 years, I advocated continuously for those for the Second Amendment, meaning working hard to renew people's weapons to get them back from the state. Having an education on civics and how to get involved, know your legislators and all those things. I am a stark conservative. I've been that way since I was 18 years old, and I want to be the voice for District 36.
Ms. Plakon.
As a mother, a businesswoman, and a conservative fighter for the causes we believe in, I believe I'm the one who can get things done. And I'm going to work with our governor, who appointed me to a state commission, and our Attorney General, Ashley Moody, who endorsed me early in my campaign. And I'm going to protect our state and hold the line for freedom here in Florida. These are serious times, and I'm going to fight for immigration reform and good paying jobs among the many serious issues important to our district as well. And most of the job of the legislature is appropriations bills and balancing our state's $110 billion budget. We really need a business person with successful business experience doing this. And I am the only business person in this race. I'm the only business person in this race and the only person appointed by Governor DeSantis. I will utilize my 18 plus years of business experience and continue our state's responsible budget. And I'm going to continue to work with Governor DeSantis, and we will get conservative legislation through. I've been called a mama bear and a conservative fighter, and I will fight like no one else for you. God bless.
Thank you. And Mr. Santos.
Yeah, so I've got 32 years of military and law enforcement experience. People talk about fighting. When you dial 911, I'm the guy who showed up. When our country dialed 911, I'm the guy who showed up. I put my money where my mouth is. I love this country and I love this community. I have been willing and I have been willing to put my life on the line for it. Having said that, I believe in the greatness of the American people and the people of Florida and the people of Seminole County. And I know that if we got out of their way, this is the same group of Americans that put a man on the moon. This is the same group of Americans that started the automobile industry. This is the same group of Americans that has stopped disease. And they've had disease breakthroughs and medical breakthroughs. We are the pioneer of the world, but we cannot rely on the government to think they can tell us how we should do things. You know, I run a successful business and, you know, I'm a member of this community. I'm a 3-time state championship football coach, and I'm out there in that community every single day. You know, I'm the candidate who's actually lived what the average citizen in District 36 has lived. I've been willing to sacrifice my life for this country and this community, and I would do it all over again.
Well, thank you so much for those closing statements. Just to remind people, this is the Republican primary. Only Republicans can vote. The top vote getter will go forward to the November election where they'll face the winner of the Democratic primary. And House District 36 covers the communities of Sanford, Lake Mary, part of Longwood, and Geneva. So we really look forward to seeing how things go on Election Day. Wish you all the best of luck. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to our readers about your views.